is a few last-minute interview tips for those applying to places like Cambridge on maths-related courses. Apologies for not making a proper video on this. I was planning to, but then things got in the way. So okay, let's go through some of this. In case you're a little bit unsure what these interviews look like, you should know you're not going to be asked any personal questions or anything about your life or your personal statement or your application outside of this interview. You're going to be asked about maths. These are mathematicians who are going to be interviewing you, and they'll just give you one or two questions about maths. So let's make absolutely clear that we know that this is the standard interview format. And this is what the interview will be. You'll be given some maths problems, you do the maths problems, or you attempt to do the maths problems, and that'll be the end of the interview. And they will basically not even bother to ask you anything outside of what your name is, outside of maths. Good. Okay, so number one thing to get through these interviews then, if you're unsure about anything, just ask them. These are mathematicians who are doing these interviews. They're not bad cops. They're not like the people that you see interviewing on The Apprentice, if that's not too dated a TV reference. These are mathematicians who just want to do maths and just want to see you do maths. And if you're unsure about anything, just ask them and they will help you out. They're not there to slam you or roast you or make fun of you or kick you out the room because you asked a maths question. They're there to answer maths questions because they're mathematicians and they just want to see you do maths. So this applies to if you're unsure about a word in the question that's a mathsy word that you're not sure about the definition. Even if it's something to do with A-level maths that you just can't quite remember in the heat of the moment, just ask them for some clarification on it. If you're working through a problem and you're just not, you think you kind of have an idea, this will be point number 2 as well, by the way, but you're just not 100% sure, you think if you spend another 10 minutes on it in silence you could probably do it, that's fine, but you don't want to waste 10 minutes of their time just watching you do it in silence, so just ask them whether or not the thing that you're thinking of is a good idea. Just ask. And likewise, for them to help, if you the opposite is true. If you don't know about something, don't pretend that you do, right? Just ask them, or say, I'm not 100% sure what that thing is, and that's completely fine. This is what an interview is for, right? So number 2, and this is the second most important thing aside from asking them, is say basically every maths thing that you're doing out loud. I know that you're not used to this, but this is not a maths test that you're supposed to just sit on a desk and do in silence. Like, you've done that. Like, you've demonstrated you're already good at that with the admissions test and with the previous exam results you've got. This is not what this space is about. What this is about is you're going to be given a maths problem and they want to see you think about it. And the way that they see you think about it, because humans can't see each other think, is you say it out loud for them and you tell them what you're thinking. Right? That's the best way of letting them in. So do the maths, say what you're doing out loud, and absolutely do not be afraid of getting any of it wrong at all. Right? I think I'm bleeding into point number 3 and 4 now. But if something is wrong, that's absolutely fine. If it's a numeracy mistake, of course we all make them, obviously. Even if it's a more conceptual maths mistake, that's fine. They'll just correct you. They'll understand that you're like, the whole point, I'll say it again, of the admissions tests and all the tests you've ever done in maths is you've already proved to them that you're a good mathematician if you're just given a bit of space and time to think about these things. So that's not what this is. What this is they're testing and seeing you as a mathematician. Like, that's what they want to see. They want to bring people into their university who are enthusiastic and keen about maths and enjoy doing maths, and that's why you want to say the things that you're doing out loud. And again, this relating to point number 1, this is a way to get around point number 1 if you're still a little bit unhappy about just asking, because if you say what you're doing out loud and the interviewer goes, oh well, actually or thinks to himself, well, that's actually not the right way of doing this problem, they'll just nudge you gently into a better direction. They might subtly point out what's wrong with what you're currently thinking, and then you'll go, oh yeah, that's a good point, and then you'll move on to another strategy. Right? That's obviously fine. That's what collaboration in maths is about, and they want to see you pick up on those points and use them to help you get through more maths. Right? That's kind of what the interview is for. And I like I said, I've bled into a few points here, but you guys are very good at maths. Like, if you've got your Cambridge interview, and even if you didn't get your Cambridge interview, you were probably very good at maths anyway, and you've already proved that through the admissions test, through the previous math exams. But that's not what this is either. right? This is you doing maths on the spot that you've never seen before, and having to talk about it with people, because even if you're refusing to talk out loud because you're apparently not taking my advice, they're going to ask you to talk about it aloud afterwards, which is again another reason you might as well just do it straight away. And the measure of success in these interviews is not, oh, they gave me 3 problems and I did them all properly and correctly, amazing. That's not the measure of success, and no one will do that. All right, even if you didn't do any of the problems all the way through correctly, that doesn't mean that the interview went badly at all, right? The interview went well if you managed to talk to them about maths. I don't know how many times I have to say this. If you talked to them about maths and you showed enthusiasm for maths and you picked up on their cues and you took advice for them about the maths that you were doing and how it was wrong and how maybe you could have improved it, like that's what they want to see, and that's the measure of how well it goes, right? Not just doing the questions correctly. And this kind of, again, I've talked about this already, haven't I? Being enthusiastic about what you're doing, right? Like, being keen. These people do maths for a living, right? They get paid to do maths in whatever area of maths it is that they're researching. And their dream in candidates that they're interviewing is that one day you'll be like them. And one day you'll be paid to, maybe even at the same university they're working at that time, to just do maths. And there'll be some break rooms in between when you have to lecture terrible undergrads, and in the break room you'll talk about maths with them as equals. Like, that's kind of their dream, is for you to become one of them. And if you're not enthusiastic in your interview day about maths, then they will write you off as one of those people, because you will never become one of those people. Because of course, if you're not enthusiastic about maths and keen about maths and passionate about maths, you're not going to become a mathematician, are you? So be passionate, be enthusiastic about it. And maybe it's even the case that the people who are giving you these problems actually wrote the problems. Maybe they didn't just find them somewhere, maybe they even wrote them, and they think there's something particularly interesting about the problem they're giving you that they want to see you be interested in. You know, I can't tell you the number of times as a teacher I've either written something or just found something online I think is really interesting or really beautiful, and I've given it to students and they're just not interested. Or even they have done it all correctly, but they're still not interested, didn't see the thing that was interesting or beautiful about it, just wrote it off and just did it and just moved on and thought about something else, and, you know, that wasn't maths. That's really disappointing when that happens. Like, it's really disappointing, and you don't want to do that with your interviewers, right? Like, you want to show that you're enthusiastic and passionate about this, and find the thing that's interesting about it and go, oh, that's actually pretty cool, right? That's a cool thing. And they'll go, yeah, it is cool, thanks for noticing. So this is what kind of how you want it to go. Just a couple of very small things to finish up here. If you're given a choice, do the interesting thing. Very occasionally they'll give you 2 pieces of paper, and this is kind of just testing all the things that I've talked about before. They'll give you 2 things, like this thing and this thing, and go, oh, just do whichever one you want. And this one here looks very tempting to do, because you're like, oh, hang on, I can do this. This is just a product of 2 functions. If I just do integral by parts, oh yeah, cos integrates sine integrates cos, this will just come back out again and I'll replace it with I, and yeah, this is fine. Integral by parts a couple of times, boom. I'll be really impressive because I can do it. Complete waste of time. Complete waste of time. I've said this before, haven't I? You've already shown that you're good at doing maths in silence. Like, the fact that you're there being interviewed by them you must have already passed that test. So don't just do it some more, right? That's not what they want to see. You want to read this question, and they want to see you say, oh, I don't know how to do that, but it's quite interesting, so I'm going to think about that now, right? I look at this question and I think, well, it's about circles, I really like circle theorems, I'm going to start talking about some circle theorems. Maybe that's not even helpful. Maybe as soon as I say that out loud, they'll go, oh, well, are circle theorems that helpful there? Maybe there's something else you should be thinking about. And I'll go, oh, is that cool? And I'll think about something else instead, right? Maybe some integration, because it's vaguely about area, or some trig, because of course trig is all about circles. Any of those things, right? Like, they just want to see you do maths. So pick the interesting thing, even if you know you're going to have less success with it, because it's interesting. And that's the whole point. The very last thing I'll say is, if you still have time, there are things you can do to prep. Of course there are. There are some great videos online, example interviews that have been filmed that I think are quite good. James Monroe has made a really good video in the last couple of days on Oxford Maths Plus, where he goes through a few interview questions that he's given. He says a lot of the things that I've said in this video, about candidates that because he actually interviews candidates. He says the same things that he wants to see in candidates as I've said here. So go watch him. This question here, someone actually sent to me via email, along with a bunch of other questions. There are plenty of online questions you can find and have a look at and have a go at. So maybe do that. And also, actually, don't just do the questions like you usually would, because again, and I've said this before, you've already shown that you're good at that. You've already shown that you're good at doing questions on your own in silence. So instead of doing that, when you're practicing these questions, put down the pen and paper. You are totally allowed to use pen and paper, but say out loud, practice saying out loud what you think you would say out loud. Right? Just give that a go. Right? Even if you're talking to no one, just give it a go saying out loud the maths that you're doing in these questions, because that's what you want to be doing. If you've got a teacher at a school who you can use, please use them. I know lots of people don't, but cool. And graph sketching is just something that comes up all the time. So maybe have a look at some graph sketching videos and have a look at a bunch of graphs. Go on GeoGebra or Desmos, whatever, and just put down a bunch of random graphs and think about why they look like. Find some interview questions that are about graph sketching. Again, think about the things that you would say out loud as you were attempting a graph sketching question. It's very likely that you might be given one, so it'd be worth having a pre-go at one of those beforehand. Anyway, good luck in your interviews, I guess.